In the frozen wilderness of northern Afghanistan, where temperatures drop to -40 degrees and survival depends on split-second decisions, Lieutenant Sarah Chun had already proven herself as one of the most formidable soldiers in her unit. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened on that December morning when her radio crackled with her commander's urgent warning. What followed would become legend among military circles, a story of impossible odds, tactical brilliance, and the kind of courage that emerges only when everything seems lost. This is the true account of how one woman's quick thinking and unshakable determination turned what should have been a devastating ambush into a masterclass of solo combat survival, forever changing how her unit viewed the impossible. The morning air in Kandahar province cut through Lieutenant Sarah Chin's tactical gear like frozen knives. She adjusted her weapon strap and checked her watch, 0547 hours. The winter of 2019 had been particularly brutal in Afghanistan, with temperatures plummeting far below anything the meteorologists had predicted. Sarah's breath formed small clouds that quickly dissipated in the bitter wind as she made her final preparations for what was supposed to be a routine reconnaissance mission. Sarah had volunteered for this assignment, much to the concern of her commanding officer, Major Williams. The intelligence reports indicated minimal hostile activity in Sector 7, a mountainous region approximately 15 kilometers northeast of their forward operating base. What made this mission different was that Sarah would be operating alone, a decision that had sparked heated debates among the senior staff. However, her track record spoke for itself. In her 18 months deployed in Afghanistan, she had successfully completed 23 solo operations without a single incident. The daughter of Chinese immigrants who had settled in San Francisco during the 1990s, Sarah had always been drawn to challenges that others considered impossible. Her father, a former engineer, had instilled in her a methodical approach to problem-solving, while her mother, a nurse, had taught her the importance of staying calm under pressure. These lessons had served her well during her military training and subsequent deployment. As Sarah loaded her equipment into the modified Humvee, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this mission. The intelligence briefing had been unusually vague, with references to possible insurgent movement and unconfirmed radio chatter. In her experience, such uncertainty often preceded the most dangerous operations. She had learned to trust her instincts, and, right now, they were telling her to be extra cautious. The drive to the insertion point took 45 minutes through increasingly treacherous terrain. Sarah's driver, Corporal Martinez, had been unusually quiet during the journey. Finally, as they approached the drop-off coordinates, he spoke up. "Lieutenant, I don't like leaving you out here alone," Martinez said, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. "The weather's getting worse, and if something goes wrong..." Sarah appreciated his concern, but she had made her decision. "I'll be fine, Corporal. This is what I do. Besides, the smaller footprint means less chance of detection. I'll maintain radio contact every 30 minutes. The insertion went smoothly. Sarah watched as Martinez's vehicle disappeared into the distance, its engine noise gradually fading until only the wind remained. She was now completely alone in one of the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan, carrying enough supplies for a 72-hour mission. Her objective was straightforward: establish an observation post overlooking the Zawar Valley and monitor any suspicious activity. Sarah's training had prepared her for solo operations, but the psychological impact of complete isolation in hostile territory was something that could never be fully simulated. Every shadow could conceal an enemy fighter. Every sound might be the precursor to an attack. The key was maintaining situational awareness while avoiding the paranoia that could cloud judgment and lead to fatal mistakes. The trek to her designated observation post took 3 hours. Sarah moved carefully, avoiding established trails and maintaining a zigzag pattern that would make it difficult for anyone tracking her to predict her next position. The snow-covered landscape provided excellent concealment, but it also made movement more challenging. Each step had to be calculated to avoid creating obvious tracks that could lead pursuers directly to her position. By noon, Sarah had established her observation post in a cluster of large rocks that provided both concealment and a commanding view of the valley below. She set up her equipment methodically, testing each piece to ensure it was functioning properly in the extreme cold. Her high-powered scope gave her a clear view of the valley floor, while her communications equipment kept her connected to base command. The first day passed without incident. Sarah maintained her scheduled radio checks, reporting negative contact and normal observations. The valley below remained quiet, with only occasional wildlife movement visible through her scope. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped even further, and Sarah retreated into her cold weather sleeping system, though she maintained a heightened state of alertness throughout the night. The second day brought a change in weather patterns. Heavy clouds moved in from the north, bringing with them the promise of significant snowfall. Sarah knew that extended bad weather could complicate her extraction, but it would also provide additional concealment for her position. She continued her observations, noting the minimal activity in the valley and beginning to wonder if the intelligence reports had been accurate. It was during the afternoon of the second day that Sarah first noticed something unusual. Through her scope, she observed 3 men moving along a trail on the opposite side of the valley. They were too far away for detailed identification, but their movement patterns suggested military training. They moved in a tactical formation, paused regularly to observe their surroundings, and carried what appeared to be assault rifles. Sarah immediately reported the sighting to base command, providing detailed coordinates and descriptions of the individuals she had observed. The response from Major Williams was swift and concerning. Intelligence assets had intercepted communications suggesting that a significant insurgent force was moving into the area, possibly with the intention of attacking coalition forces. As the sun began to set on her second day, Sarah received updated orders that would fundamentally change the nature of her mission. Instead of simple observation, she was now tasked with gathering detailed intelligence on what appeared to be a growing enemy presence in the valley. Her mission was extended indefinitely, and she was instructed to maintain her position until further notice. That night, as Sarah lay in her concealed position, she could hear sounds that hadn't been present during her first night. There were voices in the distance, too far away to understand, but close enough to confirm that she was no longer alone in this remote area. The sounds came and went with the wind, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty that kept her awake for most of the night. The third morning brought clear skies and bitter cold. As Sarah resumed her observations, she quickly realized that the situation in the valley had changed dramatically overnight. What had been an empty landscape was now showing clear signs of significant human activity. Smoke rose from several locations, suggesting the presence of cooking fires or heating sources. More importantly, she could see individuals moving between different positions, indicating an organized presence rather than random travelers. Sarah's radio crackled to life with an urgent message from Major Williams. Intelligence intercepts had revealed that a large insurgent force had moved into the valley during the night, and they appeared to be preparing for a major operation against coalition forces. Sarah's position was now considered extremely dangerous, but her intelligence gathering had become critical to understanding the enemy's intentions. The weight of responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders as she realized that her observations might be the only warning that coalition forces would receive before a potentially devastating attack. She was no longer just conducting reconnaissance. She was now the eyes and ears for hundreds of soldiers whose lives might depend on the intelligence she could provide. As she adjusted her scope to get a better view of the activity below, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The individuals she was observing were not just random insurgents. They appeared to be well-equipped and highly organized. Their weapons were modern, their movements coordinated, and their positioning suggested they were preparing defensive positions rather than planning to move through the area. Sarah realized she was observing the establishment of a major enemy stronghold, positioned perfectly to threaten coalition supply routes and nearby installations. The intelligence value of her position had increased exponentially, but so had the danger. If the enemy detected her presence, she would be completely cut off from support, facing overwhelming odds in terrain that favored the defenders. The third day passed in tense observation as Sarah documented everything she could see. Enemy strength estimates, weapon positions, supply routes, and communication patterns. All of it was critical intelligence that needed to reach coalition commanders. But, as she prepared to transmit her detailed report, Sarah noticed something that sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. Movement was approaching her position from multiple directions. The enemy had detected her presence, and they were moving to eliminate the threat she represented. Sarah's mind raced as she calculated her options. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and positioned in terrain that would make escape extremely difficult. Her radio crackled with an incoming transmission, and she heard the voice that would later become legendary among the soldiers who served with her. "Red Eagle, this is Base Command," came Major Williams' urgent voice. "We have intercepted enemy communications. They know your position. Multiple hostiles converging on your location. Extract immediately." Sarah's finger hesitated over the radio transmit button as she weighed her options. Extraction would mean abandoning the intelligence-gathering mission at a critical moment. The enemy positions she had identified would be lost, potentially costing coalition forces the advance warning they needed to prepare for the coming assault. But staying meant facing overwhelming odds with no possibility of reinforcement or support. The sound of voices was getting closer, carried on the mountain wind. Sarah could distinguish at least 3 different groups approaching her position from different directions. She was about to be surrounded with no clear escape route. In that moment, as the weight of an impossible decision pressed down on her, Sarah made a choice that would define not only her military career, but her understanding of what she was truly capable of under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. Sarah's training kicked in automatically as she assessed her tactical situation with the cold precision that had made her one of the most respected soldiers in her unit. The voices were approaching from 3 distinct directions: northeast, southeast, and directly south of her position. Based on the sound patterns and intervals between communications, she estimated approximately 12 to 15 hostiles were moving to surround her observation post. Rather than panic, Sarah felt the familiar calm that descended over her during high-stress situations. Her father had always told her that panic was simply the mind's way of giving up before exploring all available options. She had never given up on anything in her life, and she wasn't about to start now. The rocky outcropping that had served as excellent concealment for her observation post now presented both opportunities and challenges for defense. The large boulders provided natural cover from most directions, but they also limited her mobility and potential escape routes. However, Sarah recognized that these same limitations would force any attackers to approach through predictable corridors, potentially turning her disadvantage into a tactical advantage. Sarah quickly began repositioning her equipment and supplies. Her sniper rifle, a precision weapon optimized for long-range engagement, would be less effective in the close-quarters combat she was about to face. Instead, she prepared her assault rifle, checking the magazine and ensuring her spare ammunition was easily accessible. She had 6 magazines of 30 rounds each, plus her sidearm with 3 additional magazines. Against 12 to 15 attackers, ammunition conservation would be critical. The terrain analysis Sarah conducted in those crucial minutes would later be studied in military academies as an example of rapid tactical assessment under extreme pressure. She identified 4 potential engagement zones where attackers would be forced to expose themselves when advancing on her position. More importantly, she recognized that the natural rock formations created what military tacticians call fatal funnels, narrow passages where attackers would be vulnerable to concentrated fire. As Sarah made her preparations, her radio crackled again with an increasingly urgent transmission from Major Williams. "Red Eagle, status report. We show multiple hostiles converging on your position. Immediate extraction is authorized." Sarah keyed her radio, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "Base Command, Red Eagle. I count approximately 15 hostiles approaching from multiple vectors. Extraction is not feasible at this time. I am preparing to defend this position." The silence on the radio lasted several seconds before Major Williams responded. "Red Eagle, you are outnumbered 5 to 1. Fall back to secondary extraction point Bravo." Sarah had already considered that option. Secondary extraction point Bravo was located 3 kilometers southwest of her current position, accessible through a series of exposed ridgelines that would leave her completely vulnerable during daylight hours. The enemy forces approaching her position would almost certainly have additional units positioned to intercept any retreat attempt. Negative, Base command, Sarah replied. Secondary extraction route is compromised. I am maintaining position and will continue intelligence gathering. What Major Williams didn't know, what Sarah had discovered through her careful observation of enemy movements over the past day, was that her position provided oversight of a critical enemy command post. The intelligence she had gathered indicated that the insurgent force was planning a coordinated attack on multiple coalition targets within the next 48 hours. Abandoning her position would mean losing the ability to provide real-time intelligence on enemy preparations. The first enemy fighter appeared at the edge of her field of view at 1,347 hours. He was moving cautiously along a natural depression that provided concealment from the valley below, but left him exposed to observation from Sarah's elevated position. Through her scope, she could see that he was well equipped with modern weaponry and wearing tactical gear that suggested professional military training rather than the improvised equipment typical of local insurgents. Sarah held her fire. Engaging the first target would immediately reveal her exact position to the other attackers and eliminate any advantage she might gain from remaining undetected. Instead, she continued her observation, noting the fighter's equipment, movement patterns, and communication methods. This information would be valuable intelligence regardless of how the current situation resolved. Over the next 20 minutes, Sarah identified the positions of 8 additional enemy fighters. They were moving with tactical discipline, maintaining communication through hand signals rather than radio transmissions that could be intercepted. Their approach pattern suggested they had received detailed intelligence about her position, possibly through direct observation or electronic surveillance she hadn't detected. The realization that her position had been compromised for an unknown period of time added another layer of complexity to Sarah's situation. If the enemy had been observing her, they would have detailed knowledge of her equipment, her routine, and her capabilities. They might also have intercepted her communications with Base Command, giving them insight into coalition response plans. At 1,410 hours, Sarah observed something that changed her assessment of the situation entirely. An enemy fighter in the northeastern approach carried a piece of equipment she recognized immediately, a portable surface-to-air missile system. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just an attempt to eliminate her observation post. It was preparation for a major assault that would include targeting coalition aircraft. Sarah immediately transmitted this critical intelligence to Base Command. Base Command, Red Eagle. Be advised, enemy forces are carrying man-portable air defense systems. Repeat, manpads confirmed in enemy possession. The response from Major Williams was immediate and alarmed. Red Eagle, confirm manpads identification. Confirmed, Base Command. Visual identification of shoulder-launched surface-to-air missile system, northeastern approach to my position. Sarah knew that this intelligence alone justified the risks she was taking. Coalition air support was critical to ongoing operations throughout the region. If insurgent forces had acquired effective anti-aircraft weapons, it would fundamentally change the tactical situation for all coalition forces in the area. As Sarah continued her observations, she began to understand the true scope of the threat she had uncovered. The enemy force surrounding her position was not simply a local insurgent group. It was a well-equipped, professionally trained unit that had been inserted into the region for a specific mission. Their equipment, tactics, and coordination suggested foreign training and support, possibly from hostile nation-states seeking to escalate coalition casualties. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted Sarah's analysis. The enemy fighters had completed their approach and were now within 50 meters of her position. Through gaps in the rock formations, she could see movement as they prepared to close the final distance to her hiding place. Sarah made a tactical decision that would later be analyzed and debated by military strategists. Instead of waiting for the enemy to discover her position, she chose to initiate contact on her own terms. This would allow her to control the timing and potentially catch the attackers off guard. But it would also commit her to a fight against overwhelming odds with no possibility of retreat. She selected her first target carefully, an enemy fighter who appeared to be directing the movements of the others. Taking out the apparent leader might disrupt their coordination and buy her precious seconds to engage additional targets. Sarah controlled her breathing, aligned her sights, and prepared to begin what would become one of the most documented solo firefights in recent military history. At exactly 1,423 hours, as the enemy fighters began their final approach to her position, Sarah heard the transmission that would later give this engagement its legendary status among coalition forces. Through her radio, she heard her commander's voice cut through the static with urgent intensity. "Red Eagle, thermal imaging shows she's approaching your position from the west. Unknown single individual, moving fast, appears to be flanking your location." Sarah's blood ran cold. The pronoun caught her attention immediately. "She's approaching" meant there was a female among the enemy forces, which was unusual enough to warrant specific mention. More concerning was the implication that this individual was moving independently of the main attack force, suggesting a level of tactical sophistication that elevated the threat significantly. In Afghanistan, female combatants were rare among insurgent forces, but when they did appear, they were often among the most dedicated and dangerous opponents coalition forces encountered. Sarah realized she was facing not just numerical superiority, but potentially an enemy commander with specialized training and tactical knowledge. Major Williams' voice continued over the radio. "Red Eagle, the individual moving from the west appears to be carrying specialized equipment. Possible sniper or demolitions expert. You need to be aware of this threat." Sarah adjusted her position to gain visibility toward the western approach while maintaining coverage of the other attack vectors. Through her scope, she caught a glimpse of movement among the rocks approximately 200 meters to her west. The figure was moving with the fluid precision of someone with extensive combat experience, using the terrain to remain concealed while advancing steadily towards Sarah's position. The tactical situation had just become significantly more complex. Sarah was now facing a coordinated attack from multiple directions, with at least one enemy combatant who appeared to possess advanced training and specialized equipment. The odds were no longer simply numerical. They had shifted to include qualitative factors that could prove decisive in the coming engagement. Sarah keyed her radio one final time before the shooting began. "Base command, Red Eagle. Beginning defensive engagement. Multiple hostiles, estimated 15 to 20, with at least one specialized operator. We'll continue intelligence transmission as situation permits." "Roger, Red Eagle," came Major Williams' reply. "Help is en route. Hold position." Sarah knew that help, even if it was coming, wouldn't arrive in time to affect the outcome of the next few minutes. Whatever happened in this remote corner of Afghanistan would be decided by her skill, her preparation, and her determination to complete a mission that had evolved far beyond its original parameters. As the first enemy fighter stepped into her predetermined kill zone, Sarah Chun prepared to demonstrate why she had become one of the most respected soldiers in her unit. The first shot Sarah fired would later be reconstructed by military investigators as one of the most precise combat shots recorded in the Afghanistan conflict. At a distance of 73 meters, in bitter cold conditions with crosswinds gusting to 25 kilometers per hour, she placed a single round center mass on the enemy leader who had been coordinating the attack on her position. The sound of her rifle echoed off the mountain walls like thunder, immediately alerting every enemy fighter to her exact location. Sarah had traded stealth for tactical advantage, and now she had to make that trade worthwhile. Before the echo of her first shot had faded, she had already transitioned to her second target, an enemy fighter carrying what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. The enemy response was immediate and overwhelming. Automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple positions, sending bullets ricocheting off the rocks around Sarah's position. The volume of fire confirmed her earlier estimate of enemy strength, but it also revealed their positions more clearly than hours of observation had accomplished. Sarah had forced them to reveal themselves, and now she could exploit that knowledge. Military doctrine teaches that the key to surviving an outnumbered engagement is to avoid fighting all enemies simultaneously. Sarah applied this principle by using the terrain to limit the number of attackers who could bring their weapons to bear on her position at any given time. The rock formations that concealed her also channeled the attackers into predictable approach routes, allowing her to engage them in smaller groups rather than facing the full force simultaneously. Sarah's third and fourth shots eliminated two more attackers who had attempted to advance across an exposed area between rock formations. Her precision was remarkable given the stress of the situation, but it was the result of thousands of hours of training and an innate ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, and devastatingly effective. The enemy fighters quickly recognized they were facing a skilled opponent and adapted their tactics accordingly. Instead of continuing direct frontal assaults, they began using suppressive fire to keep Sarah pinned down while other fighters attempted to maneuver to flanking positions. This tactical evolution demonstrated the professional training Sarah had observed earlier, confirming that she was facing a well-trained military unit rather than a typical insurgent group. At 1,431 hours, 8 minutes into the engagement, Sarah faced her first critical ammunition decision. She had expended 18 rounds and eliminated 4 confirmed targets, but the remaining enemy fighters had learned to use cover more effectively. Her rate of engagement was decreasing while their tactical pressure was increasing. She needed to make every shot count while maintaining enough ammunition for the extended engagement that seemed inevitable. The female fighter Major Williams had warned her about made her first appearance during the 9th minute of the firefight. Sarah caught sight of her moving between positions on the western approach, and what she saw confirmed her worst fears about this opponent. The woman was carrying a precision rifle similar to Sarah's own, and her movement patterns suggested advanced sniper training. More concerning, she was positioning herself for a shot that would bypass the natural cover protecting Sarah's current position. Sarah realized she was facing a tactical nightmare, a counter-sniper engagement while simultaneously defending against multiple attackers from other directions. Standard military doctrine recommended immediate relocation when facing counter-sniper threats, but Sarah's position was surrounded. Moving would expose her to fire from the other attackers, but remaining stationary would give the enemy sniper time to line up a precision shot. The decision Sarah made in that moment would later be studied in advanced military tactics courses. Instead of choosing between equally dangerous alternatives, she created a third option by using aggressive fire and movement to disrupt both threats simultaneously. She initiated rapid fire against the closest group of attackers while simultaneously moving to a secondary position that would deny the enemy sniper her current angle of attack. The maneuver required Sarah to expose herself to enemy fire for approximately 12 seconds, an eternity in combat where trained fighters can place accurate shots in less than 2 seconds. Bullets struck the rocks inches from her position as she moved, but her suppressive fire kept the enemy fighters focused on seeking cover rather than precise shooting. The gamble succeeded, and Sarah reached her new position without being hit. From her new location, Sarah had a clear view of the enemy sniper's position. The range was approximately 150 meters across difficult terrain with multiple obstructions. Sarah had one opportunity for a clear shot before the enemy sniper would relocate to a position where Sarah couldn't engage her. The shot required compensating for wind, elevation, and the target's potential movement, all while under pressure from other enemy fighters who were using the distraction to advance on her position. Sarah's breathing technique, drilled into her through countless training sessions, automatically engaged as she prepared for what she knew could be the decisive shot of the engagement. She controlled her heart rate, synchronized her breathing, and calculated the ballistic solution with the instinctive precision that separated elite marksmen from ordinary soldiers. The shot broke at 1,442 hours, 11 minutes into the engagement. Through her scope, Sarah saw the enemy sniper's rifle drop as the woman fell backward into the rocks. Sarah had eliminated the most dangerous immediate threat, but the cost was revealing her new position to the remaining attackers. Almost immediately, concentrated fire began impacting her new location, forcing her to seek even better cover. Sarah's radio crackled with an update from Major Williams. Red Eagle, we have close air support inbound your position, ETA 12 minutes. Can you hold your position? 12 minutes seemed like hours when facing sustained attack from multiple directions. Sarah quickly calculated her remaining ammunition, 3 full magazines plus 17 rounds in her current magazine. Against approximately 10 remaining attackers, ammunition management would be critical. She needed to transition from precision shooting to tactical fire discipline. engaging only when she could guarantee hits while conserving ammunition for the final phase of the engagement. The enemy fighters, now aware that air support was likely inbound, began pressing their attack with increased urgency. Sarah could observe them moving in coordinated bounds, with some fighters providing covering fire while others advanced. Their tactical discipline remained impressive despite losing 5 of their number, suggesting they had been well trained for exactly this type of situation. During the 14th minute of the engagement, Sarah faced her most challenging tactical decision yet. The enemy fighters had succeeded in positioning teams on multiple sides of her position, creating overlapping fields of fire that severely limited her movement options. Traditional military wisdom suggested that her position was becoming untenable, but Sarah recognized something the enemy had not. Their aggressive positioning had also created opportunities for her to engage multiple targets in rapid succession. Sarah initiated what would later be described as a defensive assault, an aggressive engagement of multiple enemy positions in rapid sequence, designed to disrupt their coordinated attack before they could execute their final assault. She moved between firing positions with controlled speed, engaging targets of opportunity while using the natural cover to limit her exposure to return fire. The technique required Sarah to mentally map the positions of all remaining enemy fighters and predict their movement patterns based on their tactical doctrine. She was essentially fighting a chess game at combat speed, thinking multiple moves ahead while executing precision shooting under extreme stress. The mental demands were enormous, but Sarah's training and natural abilities proved equal to the challenge. By the 16th minute of the engagement, Sarah had eliminated 3 more enemy fighters and disrupted the coordinated assault the remaining forces had been preparing. However, her aggressive tactics had cost her precious ammunition, and she was now down to 2 complete magazines plus a partially expended one. The mathematics of the situation were becoming stark. She had perhaps 40 rounds remaining against 6 or 7 determined attackers. At 1,449 hours, 17 minutes into what had become one of the longest solo engagements in recent military history, Sarah received the radio call that would change everything. Red Eagle, this is Viper 1-1. We have visual on your position and multiple hostiles. Cleared hot for danger close support. Sarah looked up to see 2 attack helicopters approaching her position at high speed. The sight of reinforcements after 17 minutes of solo combat against overwhelming odds was almost overwhelming, but Sarah maintained her tactical focus. She needed to mark her position clearly for the helicopter crews while continuing to engage the remaining enemy fighters who were now desperate to eliminate her before air support could intervene. The final phase of the engagement required Sarah to coordinate her fire with incoming air support while avoiding being targeted by her own side's weapons. She used colored smoke to mark her position and infrared strobes to identify herself to the helicopter crews, all while maintaining defensive fire against the remaining attackers who were now caught between Sarah's position and the approaching aircraft. The sound of helicopter rotors and the sight of rocket pods being aligned for firing runs created a dramatic change in the tactical situation. The enemy fighters, who had maintained their tactical discipline throughout the ground engagement, began showing signs of confusion and desperation. Some attempted to break contact and withdraw, while others prepared for what they seemed to recognize would be a final assault on Sarah's position. Sarah keyed her radio for what she expected would be her final transmission of the engagement. Viper 1-1, Red Eagle. 6 to 8 hostiles remaining, position northwest and southeast of my location. I am marking my position with infrared strobe and red smoke. As the helicopters began their attack runs, and the sound of heavy weapons filled the mountain air, Sarah reflected on the choices that had brought her to this moment. She had volunteered for a simple reconnaissance mission and found herself in a solo firefight that had lasted nearly 20 minutes against overwhelming odds. More importantly, the intelligence she had gathered about enemy capabilities and intentions would prove crucial for coalition operations throughout the region. The engagement was about to enter its final phase, but Sarah Chun had already accomplished something that would be remembered and studied for years to come. The attack helicopter's first pass transformed the battlefield in ways that went far beyond the immediate tactical situation. As Viper 1-1's rockets impacted the enemy position southeast of Sarah's location, The concussion waves reverberated through the mountain valley, creating an overwhelming sensory environment that temporarily disoriented everyone on the ground. Sarah pressed herself against the rocks as debris rained down around her position, but she maintained her tactical awareness and continued observing the remaining enemy fighters. What Sarah witnessed during those first moments of air support was a masterclass in how quickly battlefield dynamics could shift. The enemy fighters, who had maintained impressive tactical discipline throughout the ground engagement, were now forced to make split-second decisions under completely different circumstances. Some attempted to withdraw to positions that would offer protection from air attack, while others seemed to recognize that their best chance for survival lay in completing their assault on Sarah's position before the helicopters could make another pass. The psychological impact of the air support was as significant as its physical effects. After 18 minutes of sustained combat against a single defender, the enemy fighters had been focused entirely on eliminating Sarah's position. The sudden appearance of attack helicopters fundamentally changed their tactical priorities and forced them to divide their attention between multiple threats. This division of focus gave Sarah opportunities she had been unable to exploit during the purely ground-based engagement. Sarah utilized the confusion created by the airstrikes to reposition herself within her defensive perimeter. She moved to a location that provided better oversight of the remaining enemy positions while offering improved protection from the secondary effects of additional airstrikes. This movement also allowed her to consolidate her remaining ammunition and prepare for what she anticipated would be the final phase of the ground engagement. Through her scope, Sarah observed two enemy fighters attempting to withdraw through a depression that would carry them out of the immediate area. Based on the intelligence requirements of her mission, allowing any enemy forces to escape would represent a significant tactical failure. These fighters had demonstrated knowledge of coalition positions and tactics that could prove devastating if shared with other hostile units. Sarah made the tactical decision to engage the withdrawing fighters despite the risk of exposing herself to the remaining attackers. The shots required Sarah to engage targets at maximum effective range while accounting for the challenging environmental conditions that had persisted throughout the engagement. Wind speed had increased to over 30 kilometers per hour, and the mountain air at this altitude created ballistic conditions that differed significantly from the ranges where Sarah had conducted most of her training. The first shot missed by inches, alerting the withdrawing fighters to Sarah's position and angle of fire. Sarah's second shot struck one of the withdrawing fighters, but the hit was not immediately disabling. The wounded fighter continued moving, though at a significantly reduced pace. Sarah's third shot eliminated the second fighter cleanly, but she now faced the tactical problem of a wounded enemy who might escape with critical intelligence about her capabilities and position. The decision to pursue the wounded fighter represented one of the most controversial aspects of Sarah's engagement when it was later reviewed by military analysts. Standard doctrine suggested maintaining her defensive position until air support could complete the elimination of remaining threats. However, Sarah's assessment was that the intelligence value of preventing any enemy escape outweighed the risks of temporary displacement from her established position. Sarah initiated a controlled advance toward the wounded fighter's position, moving in tactical bounds that allowed her to maintain observation of other potential threats while closing the distance to her target. The technique required exceptional situational awareness and the ability to process multiple threats simultaneously while executing precise movement under combat conditions. During her advance, Sarah encountered evidence that fundamentally changed her understanding of the enemy force she had been engaging. Among the equipment scattered around one of the eliminated fighters' positions, she discovered documentation and communications gear that suggested this unit had been conducting surveillance on coalition forces for an extended period. The intelligence materials included detailed information about supply convoy routes, personnel movements, and operational schedules that could only have been obtained through sophisticated reconnaissance operations. The implications were staggering. Sarah realized she had stumbled upon not just a tactical assault team, but an intelligence-gathering operation that posed a strategic threat to coalition operations throughout the region. The enemy's knowledge of her position and the precision of their approach to her observation post suddenly made sense. They had been conducting counter-surveillance operations and had identified her mission before she had detected their presence. Sarah immediately transmitted this critical intelligence to Major Williams while continuing her pursuit of the wounded fighter. The information prompted an immediate escalation of the situation's priority level, with additional air assets being diverted to support Sarah's position and prevent any possibility of intelligence compromise. The wounded fighter had taken cover in a natural cave formation approximately 50 meters from Sarah's original defensive position. The location provided excellent concealment and protection from air attack, but it also represented a tactical dead end. Sarah recognized that the fighter was trapped but still represented a significant threat due to the intelligence materials he might be carrying. Viper 11 contacted Sarah with an assessment that would require her to make another critical tactical decision. Red Eagle, we have identified the cave position, but we cannot engage without risk of structural collapse that could bury potential intelligence materials. Ground assault will be required to secure the position. A ground assault on a prepared position occupied by a wounded but still dangerous enemy fighter was exactly the type of operation that military doctrine recommended against for solo operators. However, Sarah's assessment was that the intelligence materials in the cave could provide critical information about additional enemy operations planned for the region. The tactical risk was significant, but the intelligence value was potentially enormous. Sarah spent 7 minutes conducting reconnaissance of the cave position from multiple angles, identifying potential approach routes, and assessing the defensive advantages available to the occupant. The cave opening was positioned to provide excellent fields of fire across all possible approach routes, while the natural rock formation would provide protection against most weapons Sarah had available. The solution Sarah developed was another example of tactical innovation under extreme pressure. Instead of conducting a traditional frontal assault, she